Okay, this is going to be a quick overview of working with text in Illustrator and then in Figma. So for this, you should already have some familiarity with working in both of these programs, and if you don't, you should take a look at that video first, or take a look at some other tutorials. This is going to be text specific. So for this example, I have some text here, and I just want to create sort of a dynamic composition in Illustrator. And the first thing to know here is there are two different modes of working with text in Illustrator. So if I switch to my text tool, again, T is the shortcut there. And if I just click and then I put some text in here, and then I switch back to my selection tool, I can scale and work with this text the same way that I would with a shape, where I can kind of like transform it or stretch it or move it like a shape. Now, if you, again, use the text tool and then if you click and drag, you're actually creating what's called area text, which functions much more like a text box. So if you transform this box here, you are changing the size of the text box, which is different than what is called touch type, where the text functions as a shape. So you can either just click to get touch type, or click and drag to get the area type, but you can also switch between the two on the fly as you need to. And the way to do that is if you hover over this little circle next to your text and you double click on it, it will transform that text box into the other type of text box. So you'll see here, I have a different icon now when I hover, and if I double click, I go back to touch type. As far as editing your text in Illustrator, over here on the properties panel, you have all kind of the expected text options and character options. So you can switch your font here to anything you have installed. You can add fill and stroke if you don't, or change the opacity, change your alignment options here. But if you want to do some more advanced stuff as far as like editing the actual shapes of the letters or editing the letter forms themselves, you can't do it here because this is text. It's not a shape. So in order to do something like that, like if we wanted to say, I don't know, for example, if we wanted to get rid of the tittle on the I here, you could, cover it up with a white square, and that's kind of a janky quick fix, but would actually be kind of the right way to do this, I guess depending on your goals, would be to edit the I as a shape. So to do that, we need to convert the text into an outline, so into a shape. And once you do that, you will no longer be able to edit this like text where you can type in it. So I have my text selected, and I'm going to go to type up here in the menu and then go to create outlines. And you can see that shortcut is Shift-Control-O on Windows. And when I click that, you'll see the light blue outlines coming around the letter forms like we get when we work with shapes. And now this is functioning as either a group or a compound path, depending on the letter forms in here. But you'll see if I grab my direct selection tool, I can grab just that I shape. Oops, looks like this is a compound path. So I can go to Object. Let's first ungroup it. And let's go to Object Compound Path, Release. This is basically treating both of these shapes as one path that are separated. But now I can select both of these and I can delete just that tittle on the I. And you can do all kinds of stuff with this. So for example, now we can use these as shapes and work with the Shape Builder tool. So I could overlap this S on the D, and then, for example, subtract the front, and now we've cut the S out of the D shape, and I can work with the letter forms individually as well. Again, the downside of this is that you lose the ability to edit the text here, so I can no longer change this from the bold weight into the lightweight. So I would recommend making a copy of your layer before doing this. or working on a separate artboard with outline text compared to editable text in Illustrator. Some other things you can do. Let's go ahead and grab our curve tool or your pen tool, and I'm just going to draw a curve here. Let me switch that to a stroke just so we can see it easily. And let's copy this text just so we have it. If you want to create some dynamic compositions where your text is following the path of something, perhaps you want to put your text around a circle or something like that. If we click and hold on the text tool, you will find Type on a Path tool. And when you get this icon and you hover over a path, now you can put the text there or type along that path. And then if you need to edit this, you'll have some options here where you can change the, oops, it's kind of hard to get to sometimes. Beginning and end points of this. So let me zoom in. You'll see when I get that little arrow icon, I can change where the center point of this is to shift that text, or change where that text starts on the path. Okay, so those are some quick things in Illustrator. Now let's hop over to Figma and I will show you how to do some of these same things over there, although it is a little bit jankier in Figma since it's not made to do the same things. Okay, so I'm over in Figma. I just have an empty frame here, and I'm going to grab my text tool, and I'm just going to put that text that I copied in this text box. So you'll see, just like in Illustrator, working with the area type, that is the default in Figma, so this doesn't function where you can like by default scale or transform this text. One thing I like to do when I'm working with type in terms of like composition and not as like paragraphs of text, I like to come over here in layout and use the auto width, which will expand the length of that text box to be whatever the length of your text is. So you'll see as I delete things out of here, that text box shrinks, and then if I paste it back in, it expands again. You can put soft returns by holding Shift Enter if you want to start to break this up a little bit. So something like that. But let's talk about something like scaling. So for example, if I want to make X-rays really big, I could select this text. Bear with me. Okay. If I want to make this really big, I could keep scaling up the point size of this. So I could make this 300 points and then we get this a little bit bigger, but that's kind of finicky because it's hard to determine exactly what size you want this to be. So for that, I would recommend using the scale tool. So over here under the move tool, you'll find scale with K. And now you can scale this text proportionally, or anything else on your canvas for that matter, using the scale tool. Okay, what else? So let's talk about creating those. I'm gonna make this bold really quick just so we can have some shapes to play with. We talked about treating text as shapes in Illustrator by creating outlines. We don't have create outlines in Figma. Instead, what we have is, let me find it, outline stroke. The wording doesn't make a ton of sense in Figma, but this is what it's doing to the text, is it's turning it into individual vectors the same way that it does in Illustrator. So now if I ungroup this, I can do the same thing we did in Illustrator, where I can delete individual parts of a shape, or come in here and edit the points of a shape, or even use our Pathfinder tools. Use our Pathfinder tools to edit these. So I could subtract the front from that A and kind of alter the shape. Okay, for text on a path, there's no built-in functionality in Figma to do that. So anything that you know Illustrator can do that Figma can't do, and you're looking for a way to replicate it, sometimes you can find a plugin to do that. So for example, if I create a path here, and let's say I want to place this text on that path, you can search within Figma for the plugins. I have better luck just Googling what I'm trying to do, and then oftentimes it will turn up a community plugin. And then you can find those plugins here under Actions, Plugins and Widgets, and you can see I've already searched for the two-path plugin that I know does the thing that I'm trying to do. These will vary in terms of quality depending on what you find and what you're trying to do, but they all function a little bit differently. So it will launch a separate window here. Oftentimes they will try to give you a little tutorial for how to use the plugin, and you can see here they're telling me to select some text and then select the path, and then I can select a link and it will try to place the text along the path here. And so that's how we can do this here in Figma, and then I would play with this to kind of work with it to try and remove that line behind the text unless that's what you're looking for. Okay, so those are two different programs for working with text to create compositions, and that is to build on what you already know about working in Illustrator and Figma to create layouts.